Welcome back to Rounding the Bases Extra Innings. 4 final questions as we round the bases with Karen Boyd. And this will be fun because we've got to hit a lot of the food. But you and I were having a conversation. The connection, certainly in New Orleans, between jazz and food. And it's pretty deep, too. I mean, not just, hey, they got great food there. Hey, they got great music there. All of which is true and part of I think, the soul and the heartbeat of New Orleans. How and why are those two linked so beautifully together?
It's an interesting intersection. I think jazz really helped to shape the food experiences in New Orleans, and here's why. Jazz, in my layman's terms, is a collection, a montage of notes. It's fusion of different cultures. And if you think about jazz in those terms, and then you overlay the fantastic, diverse food experiences you get in New Orleans, you then see that connection. I can think of, everything from gumbo to bread pudding, right? So I'm looking at a savory piece and I'm looking at bread pudding. And each of those have unique recipes involved depending on how you were raised. And that's always a point of debate, actually. So I think jazz is the same thing. You can look at jazz and say, okay, there's New Orleans jazz, Kansas City jazz, Chicago jazz, St. Louis even gets into that debate. And you can see how intertwined those conversations become. And then when you overlay food, particularly in those regions as well, you can see how there's an intersection. But I love the cultural diversity of jazz. And then I think that inspired the cultural diversity melting pot kind of food experiences that you have in New Orleans in particular.
Oh, it's just such a unique place.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that's been there knows that there's a different feel. I think the greatest cities in our country all have their own sort of unique feel to them. And you can make the argument that go to New York and it's unique neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That's probably the case everywhere too, but you really can feel like you're in different cities just in New York, which is part of the beauty of there. But there's just something truly distinct about New Orleans where there oftentimes I feel like I'm in another country. I don't know what country. It just feels like I'm not in the
Right.
United States. It's different, right? It's different culturally. Okay, you talked in the audio version of the podcast, and if you're watching us on YouTube right now, I encourage everyone to listen to the audio version, Rounding the Bases, wherever you find your podcasts. But you talked about the influence of your mother and apple pie. Do you have a favorite thing to make beyond apple pie? I know that there's a lot.
So my favorite thing is not making apple pie. That's hers.
Yeah, right. That's how you learned.
That's how I learned. I think my favorite thing is actually gumbo because it honors my grandmother. I get all kinds of requests. Like I mentioned before we went on the air, I just pulled 2 peach cobblers out of the oven. I cannot get away from peach cobblers. They are a favorite of a lot of people in the market. But I think for me, the process and remembering all the things she taught me when I'm putting together that gumbo is probably my favorite thing.
I'm actually looking at the gumbo on the website right now. Well, there's a couple of them. There's seafood and there's traditional. And I think as soon as I get home, I'm going to say to my wife, we need to order one of these because, again, I'm getting hungry. I haven't eaten yet today either. That was either a good thing or a bad thing. That's probably a bad thing, but especially leading into talking to you because I want to order one of everything. It's interesting with your culinary background. You mentioned to me that really there is only one classically trained chef in the family, and that is your son. You mentioned in the audio portion what an honor it is when you're able to have him. What is your favorite thing when he is there? Or maybe it's a lot of different things. I don't know, but I would imagine that's a unique experience.
With him, there's a term we use with him because he likes to what I call fling food. What that means is he is one that's not confined. I think the difference between myself and him, and it's a chore for him to bake because that is regimented. You have to follow things more precisely. He was trained in a more of a fusion, eclectic cooking style, which has served him well. And what I mean by that is he's one that'll go down to a market that morning, see what's available, and then put together a menu. So when he comes to town, which is rare, right? The first thing we never ask him what is he going to make, right? It is more, he's more interested in, and it's interesting because when he comes to Kansas City, he's used to going to being in areas where they're more year-round farmers markets, seasonal, right. So when he comes here, the first thing he has to do is figure out where he's going to go to get his inspiration, right? So I really, anything he makes is always super layered. It's always put together very well, and it's always an extraordinary taste experience. So I don't know if I can, I don't think I have a favorite of his because it's always changing. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the answer right there, and gives a little bit of the depth, I think, to his creativity and skills that how could you say, because you don't know what it's going to be.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably part of the fun for him too. Where is he located, by the way?
Right now he's operating out of Colorado. Seasonally, he splits his time normally between Miami and Colorado. Normally, right?
Okay.
But right now I can say he's in Colorado.
Okay. Last question for you, and I think that we see this in the descriptions of your son too, coming to town, looking for those local food sources, and you spoke about this in the audio version of the podcast, is just that incredible attachment, that love, that passion for not just supporting local, but everything that goes with that, right? I mean, in terms of the way you go about your business, and feels like that has become more of a trend in a good way. I mean, I know sometimes things can just get trendy because it's the thing to do, right, but this seems like a good thing to do in every community too. Can you talk about the evolution of that in our walk-off question here? Because I think it's something that we are seeing so much now around the country, and I assume the world, farm to table, supporting local and all of that. And I know that it's something that you believe so strongly in.
So I really, that actually started with Ivanhoe. Ivanhoe has a pretty nice farmer's market. So in my role as executive director for Ivanhoe, I got to know a lot of local farmers. And as a matter of fact, in the early days, I participated as a vendor in the Ivanhoe farmers market, doing small versions of my baked goods. And the and the advantage there is wherever I could, I would incorporate other vendors, farmers, vendors of the farmers market, their ingredients in my product. Let's say blackberries and raspberries in one of my versions of bread pudding. I think it's important for me, when you are building this kind of business, to look around and see how you can positively impact other small businesses in your community. So I intentionally seek out, and I have over time, more and more of farmers. And like I just found a couple of honey suppliers right here in Kansas City. So I think that's more than a I know it's more than a fad for me. It is something that I think is a responsibility in terms of me giving back to the community and helping others come along when I can do sourcing with them. Yeah.
Powerful, very impactful as well. Again, I want to encourage everybody to listen to the audio version of this podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, search for Rounding the Bases. And definitely it's in the show notes, but check out all of Karen's work, or at least a good chunk of it. Now I'm fixated on the chocolate mocha cupcakes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I tell you a weird one that got some traction. I think it's still out there. It's these baked chocolate bacon cupcakes. Incredible. And sometimes I will get inspiration from other people too. They'll call and say, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing whatever it is?" And that's one of them.
Yeah,
I think it might have come from my niece, and she said, "Oh, I was on this campus, and they had these, chocolate bacon cupcakes. You think you could like replicate something like that?" So I'm going, "Okay, I will see." And then and they took off. Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. Chocolate bacon cupcakes with chocolate buttercream. You have to be kidding me. I would like some of those as well. And I'm also always a sucker for carrot cake. I know that's pretty simple, but
yeah.
Carrot
well,
cake.
my cake, if you're looking at that carrot cake, and this is something that I intentionally
can't believe I'm doing this to myself right now.
So cutting down on sugar is a big thing with me.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at that carrot cake, it's actually a tort, and I do an education piece. The difference between a cake and a tort is basically the tort is 3 layers, and then there's no icing on the sides. But my carrot cake is actually one that uses fresh pineapple. Wow. It's no canned pineapple in there, and so it's pretty interesting. But that is I'm glad you fixated on that, because I distinguish between cakes and torts all the time. Yeah.
I like them all.
Okay.
I'm trying to behave as well, but right now I'm having incredible thoughts about all of it, and it just looks incredibly savory and mouthwatering. And again, I will remind everybody to check out Patrice's culinarycollective.com. Karen, you're amazing, not just in the kitchen, but with everything that you're doing. And I really appreciate all the time that you've spent with me today. I'm Rounding the Bases and Rounding the Bases Extra Innings. Thanks so much.
Thank you.